welcome to Consciousness Chronicles. I'm here today with Millie. I am Linda, and we have what we hope to be a reoccurring guest on here, Miss April. And we're here to just share our wit and wisdom over, I don't know, I'm drinking lemon water today. What are you ladies having? I'd really like
Absolutely
some
nothing.
wine or tequila, but back on
Coffee.
track. The intention of this podcast is to bridge the gap between the spiritual novice and the conscious veteran, and wherever you are on this human journey is the perfect place for you to be. And here we are, three humans on our journey, gonna pull from the magic jar. Okay, and if you don't know what the magic jar is, it's a jar full of subject matter that we talk about. And today we have, oh my, death and the afterlife. Not like you know
She
anything
could
about
start
that.
this one. She could
Oh.
start that. April could start that. Woo.
Death and yeah, Ms. April, please do not hold back.
Yeah,
Please
no.
share your truth with everyone because you have an amazing story to tell.
Well, yeah. So I want to preface this by these are my experiences, and my beliefs, I guess, are kind of formed. My perceptions of reality are formed from what I experienced, and that's probably going to be different for different people. And so when I talk about what I experienced in terms of my near-death experience, I'm not saying that that's what it's going to be like for anyone else. And I'm not saying that you should believe in the reality that I believe in now. As a result, what I would like to say is that you need to have your own experiences, and you need to form what you believe in your perspectives based on what you go through. I feel like what I have to offer is valuable because we really are not hearing a lot about this kind of near-death experience, which was good and bad. Like it was a mix of both. You hear either people saying it was all love and light and everything's perfect, or you hear the opposite of that. I was like frying in hell. Like that's the two things that you tend to hear when you read up about these experiences. So how much, Linda, do you want me to share about this?
How much do you feel comfortable sharing? Because I only know the nuances of the story. I don't know a lot about it, and I would love to hear.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like initially when I first went through it, I was kind of still in bliss land, and I'm sure Millie can kind of relate to that. And, you think everybody should know these things, and you want to tell everybody. And then it tends to cause a little bit of cognitive dissonance, and you feel their discomfort around what you're sharing. And mine particular, because it coincides with what we've been through in the last 4 years, which was,
The C word.
the C word, right? I'll try to be careful around that. But I was a person who was not, well, let me tell you a little bit about my spiritual state before. Before this, I was a newcomer to the new age, so to speak. And for me, reality was all love and light, all good. Like everything was good. If I couldn't explain it away with good, it's because I didn't understand it. It still was all good. Like that was kind of the way I saw the world. And entering this right in probably one of the most not good times in the history of mankind, that became more and more challenging to kind of hold on to that as I witnessed everything going down in our world. And then I had some, I guess, hesitation around a certain medical procedure that will go unnamed, which I'm sure everybody can put it together. And so I decided, yeah, there you go. That's it. And so I decided to kind of just watch and see. I worked in the medical field for a long time, and I'd seen injuries. And then I worked in alternative healthcare for over 15 years, and I saw more problems with our medical system and with injuries. I mean, devastating things. So needless to say, I was kind of hesitant. I wasn't coming from an ideological place. I wasn't rabid about it. I just thought, I don't know that this is a really good thing. And I wasn't feeling like it was, like I had clarity about it. So I chose not to do that. Well, I came down with the C thing, and I got very, very sick. And within, and I thought I was getting better, but on day 10, I started having trouble breathing, and it scared me. And in retrospect, I think if I would have probably not been so fearful about it, maybe it wouldn't have ended up the way it did. But my husband took me to the emergency room and they whisked me away. And it was a really terrible experience, really terrible. I was very mistreated and abused and gaslit and starved and not given water and not fed. And it was not like, I remember medicine being problematic when I worked in it, but I had never seen anything like this. I felt like everybody there was traumatized, and would come to find out later that the reason that they behaved the way they did through my NDE was because they were frightened, and fear produces nothing good. And so their behaviors towards me, while not justified because it's not okay, were a direct correlation with the amount of fear that our world was in at that time. And so it's easy to say that now, but it was super hard to go through it because it was just very shocking to me on every level. I was then given a drug that has a 60% kill rate in early studies when it was people used it in experiments in Africa. And within 2 days of having that drug, my oxygen that was going up and my health that was getting better started to decline. And my sats went way down. And on one particular evening, and I'm giving you the short version, I wrote a book about, it's a little bit longer, but it's not a long book. But my
And we'll
sats,
put a link to that below, so make sure you share that with me.
okay, I certainly will. So my sats went way down, and all of a sudden my room is filled with people, and a doctor screaming at me to agree to be vented. And I did not want to be vented. I did not want to be vented. And I was shaking my head no, but I couldn't speak because they had this high flow oxygen and they were pushing my face into the bed. And at some point, she must have yelled at me for a good 20-30 minutes. And I finally just nodded. I wanted her to stop. And the next thing I know, I was out of my body. And I could see myself on the bed. I was out of my body. And I knew I was dead. And the minutes before it happened, I was terrified because of all the craziness that was going on in the room. But as soon as I was out of my body, I had no fear. I was completely free of my thinking mind. It had checked out. And I was subject to sort of a lesson by some other entity, which I did not have any other name for but love, because that's what it felt like. And it showed me the contents of my brain, like of all of our minds, and how we manufacture fear there, but that it's not real. It's not a real thing. That fear is not a real thing, that the only thing that is real is love. And it also helped me to have compassion for the people that were mistreating me, compassion for people in my life that had mistreated me. And I came back in a very blissful state in ICU. I just remember seeing the lights rolling down the hall to the ICU, and there I was. And there's a lot more to this story. I'm kind of abbreviating it. But what I've come to understand is that because I didn't have the language at the time, and it's taken a long time for me to integrate this. And honestly, I'm still in that process, is that, we are being loosed for our negative energy. Something is gaining control. And that was what he was showing me in my mind, he, she, whatever it was that the fear that was being produced was almost like an energy source for the negative energies that were fueling this whole thing. And that while the real virus in our world is fear. And so that's kind of what I was shown during that experience. And again, it's kind of an abbreviated story. But, you know, death is not, there's not a finality to the divine spark that we all are. You're just in a vehicle. And I guess that was one of the things I wanted to relay to people, is to not be afraid. And then also to their loved ones, you know, it's true. They went through a lot of really horrible things, but they're not suffering anymore. And that's huge, because as soon as I left my body, there was no more suffering for me in my experience. So that's the short version.
Why do you think you came back? Were you asked to go back, or how did that transpire?
No, we never had that conversation. I was not asked to come back. I just was back, which I think is unusual, because I hear people say, oh, you know, they said it wasn't your time or anything, but this never happened to me.
Millie's like, no, they always make me come back.
You know, I
I'm
never,
sorry, I interrupted April. Please.
I just never had that conversation. I was just so content. I never even got a chance to ask questions. I was just getting the download, and there was no light. It was completely dark, but it was like this expansiveness and oneness with all that is, that I felt. It wasn't a bad dark. It was actually a very peaceful, dark place. And I felt like whatever was assisting me was on my side. You know, they weren't trying to do anything nefarious. It was just, look, these are some things you need to understand. And so maybe I came back to share this. Maybe I came back to integrate it and grow as a human being so that I could better live my life. You know, there's a lot of questions around that I don't really have the answers to. But what I am clear on is, and that I wasn't clear on before, is that there is good and bad here. And it's a mix of both. It's not all bad, but it's definitely not all good, as I had thought before. I'd come from this space way before kind of getting involved in New Age circles, where I was exposed to so much polarization and so much ideology that I just kind of threw it all away and adapted this positive mindset, positive thinking, everything's good, it's all love and light kind of mentality. But I feel like going through this experience has enlightened me to the fact, I'm not enlightened, but enlightened me to the fact that we live in a dualistic realm here, in 3D. And I feel like I was very delusional to believe otherwise. And I'm not saying that to be critical of anybody that feels that way. It certainly is a much more comforting way to go, you know, or to live life, is to believe that nothing's bad and that everything is for your good. But I don't actually really believe that anymore.
Wow.
What did you learn? What was the biggest lesson you learned? I mean, when you go through something like that, it changes you. You might not even realize it at the very moment that it's happening, but I think that at some point, as the time goes, and it's been what, 3-4 years for you, the further you go from it, the more you realize. I mean, I have more questions now, 10 years after my death experience, than I had at that very moment. And then last year I had a heart attack and left my body again. And I'm like, I don't understand why you keep bringing me back. I'm done here. Like, give me a ticket, a one-way ticket. I mean, and I know that sounds horrible, but where I went, just like you, there was only love. There was no fear. And in that space of nothingness was the first time in my human experience that I was free.
Yes.
I've never had it since then.
What did it look like? Was it the void like April experienced?
Mine was, if you've ever seen the movie The Matrix, you know, the white room where the architect, the guns start coming out, that is, you can't tell the floor from this. I mean, it's all white, like this white. That was my room. It was just white. And then I kept hearing this soft voice saying, then my father showed up, and I didn't want to come back, and he gave me a message, and I'm like, no, I'm keep going. But the voice felt very real. It's not your time. What I was told is that I was getting an upgrade, and I needed to get out of I needed to get out of my way.
Mhm.
It's been 10 years. I don't know what upgrade I got because it's just like I have no idea. And I don't know. I mean, I know you must, April, you must have questions. I get very skeptic about
Mhm.
what I experience. You
Mhm.
know, if the oxygen is not hitting your brain, is it just, a chemical imbalance in your brain that makes you see these hallucinations? Did you really imagine it? I read this book right after I came back. It was a really good book. I can't remember. I found it on Barnes and Noble in one of the sales section. It was like a month after I had come back.
Mhm.
And it said they had done this research, and what they found in the research of people that had come back from near-death experiences was that depending on your belief system, it's what you actually see on the other side.
Yeah,
So if
there's
you're
that too.
Christian, you will probably see Jesus Christ.
Yes.
If you're, you know what I mean? Like, and if you're Buddhist, you see Buddha or whatever.
Mhm.
Obviously, I encompass all the religions, and I didn't have that. I just had the greatest love and consciousness.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
you talk to other people on that, what they see is totally different. They see what they are, what their belief is.
Well, how do you, like, how do you say his name? Mikoski talks a little bit about this, that most near-death experiences are kind of like being in the waiting room at the dentist office. Like, it's really nice in there. Like, you see, like, they're playing music and there's magazines. And so when you have near death, that's kind of like what you come back with. Oh, it was nice, most people. And I do think they tend to see the magazines that they typically read in there. So I think that part's probably true, but I also know that consciousness exists outside the mind. So I don't think it's a brain mechanism, because the mind completely went offline for me. It was just gone. Um, but I do think, yeah, I mean, whatever brings you comfort, whatever it is, you has been a belief system, I think probably does somehow, it is somewhere in the field outside of the mind. That's my belief. And you asked what I learned, there's a lot of things I've taken from this, and there's still things that I am learning. It's not like a instantaneous, like, because I don't understand all of it. Like, I'm looking to understand it. And that's what the McCoskey book kind of like gave me a little bit of I guess, his perspective, some of which I think, yeah, that sounds about right. And some of which I'm like, I don't know. But the biggest thing I learned is to be a warrior in the garden, not a gardener in the war.
Wait, say that again. Say that again.
To be a warrior in the garden, not a gardener in the war.
Wow.
Wow.
That's what I've kind of has come to me, is the warrior can have its own back and claim its own sovereignty, but it can also garden. So it has dual purpose. Like, it can be the caretaker, the nice one that's taking care of the plants, but when the war comes, it can also fight and defend itself. Because that was the missing piece for me, was issues with boundaries. And the reason that I'm alive today is I stood up for myself, and I didn't walk. I got rolled out of there, but I got out of there. I don't think I would be alive. I honestly believe I would not be alive. So the biggest lesson amongst others is being a warrior in the garden, not a gardener in the war. Because I can garden all the time, but then there's going to come that moment when I have to have my own back. And where my mindset was before this, with all love and light and everything's perfect, and there's a reason behind everything. I was just a gardener. That's all. So when the war came to me, I didn't have the strength to fight it for myself. And it really took someone almost being killed, or left to die. You can decide what you think that was, to finally wake up to that truth and to stand in my own authority and my own sovereignty. So that was a gift that came from that. I wish it never, I will never say that was worth it, or that, for a while I was saying, oh, I guess that was supposed to happen, but I don't feel like that was right on any level.
Yeah, but you are a different person today because of it. So I mean, it did serve its purpose,
It
whatever the
did.
purpose was.
From a
You know what I
higher
mean?
perspective, it
Yeah.
certainly did serve its purpose. But from 3D, it was a wicked, awful thing.
Mhm.
And I am amongst probably hundreds of thousands of people that have faced this, probably most of them not surviving from it.
Are you afraid of dying?
No.
I'm not either.
No.
What about you, Linda?
I don't think I'm afraid of dying. I mean, I want to stick around and see my grandkids and all that. But, if I were to go tomorrow, I had a really good life. I enjoyed it. But, I also want to get out of the soul trap.
Yeah.
Mikoski, Howdy Mikoski, if nobody is familiar with him, go check out his work because it's very mind expanding, I guess is the best word for it, because it brought me to a space of realizing the true creator of wherever we came from would not put us into this space of such duality and suffering and cruelness. We're clearly being harvested here and farmed here for the negative energy. So I don't want to be recycled again into that whole thing. I want out, so I'm going to do whatever I need to do to leave and go to the one true creator and not have myself be harvested.
I'm gonna go agnostic on you. How do you know? How do you know that what he's saying or what you believe, like how do you know? And I say this because the more spiritual experiences and phenomena I have experienced, the more questions I have about why we go through them and why we're here. Like I have absolutely no idea why I'm here.
He does not say that he knows, and he says no one really can, and I don't know. It
Yeah,
just
totally
it just
different.
resonates given my experience. And like when we first started this podcast, that was really important for me for people to understand that my perceptions are based on what I've experienced in my movie. You might be in an entirely different movie, and if you're in like a comedy or a love story, awesome. I've been in a drama, so it's been all over the place,
Ellen
and
Nuevo.
yeah. So I don't know, I'm looking very much into early Gnosticism. I've been reading up about the Cathars, which were two groups that were exterminated that held a lot of these similar beliefs that McCoskey shares about. I'm a researcher, so I'm always learning. So I don't want anyone to follow what I'm saying or follow my path. I don't want that. I want people to evaluate information and don't be afraid to get that cold glass of water in the face. Like, don't be afraid to do that. Like, it may be correct for you now, but maybe additional information might come. I don't fully agree with everything he says. I think life is so much more nuanced. I don't feel like it's quite polarized in any one direction. I think I do really much resonate with the middle way, like that all truth is kind of in that middle spot, not necessarily to one side or the other. So I guess I would just encourage people to be brave enough to have questions, just be courageous and have the questions, but don't settle necessarily on an answer. I don't, I can't. The only thing I know for sure is what I've experienced, and what I experienced outside of body was really pretty damn wonderful. And what I've experienced here has really been challenging. So
You are definitely changed because of that experience. There's something that comes back with you. Heightened level of sensitivity. Eventually it evens out. Like I had several months that every morning when I would wake up, my vessel, this human body, it was too small for my essence, for my soul. And I would wake up knowing that I didn't feel comfortable, that it was too tight, that it was pressing on something. And I spent months like that trying to, I went to see a therapist, and thank God she was very spiritual, and she was able to help me understand that I still had control of this body, and the essence, the light of me, the soul was trying to make sense. The humanness was trying to make sense of what was happening. But I mean, I've spoken to other people who have had near-death experiences, and they're forever changed. What happens, I think, is the longer period that happens and the more distance, you still fall back into the human experience. So you kind of forget the magic that happened, whether it was good or bad. You tend to put it up somewhere because life happens and you're living in this human experience. And it requires us to be reminded, like you telling the story reminds me of my own. And, you nearly died, Linda. I mean, you touched the gates of heaven too. I mean, you didn't have a near-death experience, but in many ways you did. And I think that if you go through any illness, you don't have to flatline in order to get there. If you are at the end and you're struggling with something, there are moments where you're awakened and you're like, wait, what is all this for? There's an awakening that happens. And I think that part of the NDEs is the awakening part. You're literally awakened to something completely different than what you perceive to be life.
Yep.
And your life will never be the same. I mean, I keep being reminded, I'm like Deadpool. Boom, coming back. And it's like, I'm so tired of being Deadpool. Like I get it. I mean, I don't know what I'm supposed to be learning from each one of those experiences, other than the fact that I can't check out and I can't go. There has to be a reason that we're here. I don't know if for the rest of my life I'm going to understand what it's all about, because how many times haven't we been here and done it and we forget once we leave?
Yeah.
And so my issue is I don't want to forget. I mean, I don't want to be completely my mind erased, because there should be a part of us that actually remembers I experienced that in that other life. I don't want to have to do it again. So let me go to the next lesson. And there's questions,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
each question brings about 10 more questions. So it's fascinating.
Do either of you feel that you came back with a new sense of living? Like, after my cancer experience, it's like, I'm not putting shit on hold anymore. I'm not going to say, oh, well, we'll wait and do that when we retire, or we'll wait and not spend the money on this. It's like, no, let's fucking go experience it.
Yeah.
I think
I-
September last year when I had my heart attack and died. I think that one was my wake up call, because I was alone, couldn't get to a phone. I was in bed. I was hours without being able to move once I dropped back into my body. And the one thing I did ask is, something has to change. I can't continue like this.
Mhm.
And when I made that conscious decision that life had to change, got to be careful what you ask for, because it created chaos. And in essence, my life has been upside down, inside out, and all.
Yeah.
But it pushed me to actually start living for me for once. And I
Yes.
think that if that's not a wake up call, I don't know what is.
I feel similarly. I feel like I have such a resistance to what's not correct for me now. And I, for most of my life, was just a human doormat and just kind of went along to get along, don't want to rock the boat and do this or do that. And, I won't be myself in front of them because they can't handle it or whatever. It's like I I don't have it in me to be other than who I am. And that's been costly. That's been costly. In some relationships, that's been hard. So I don't know. I feel like chaos is part of, like, it's a cycle of, after chaos, there's new birth. Like, there's entropy, and then which is not, this is not even a word, but in Gene Keys it's used, syntropy. So there's this like cycle of disorder to order all the time. And you can't have order unless you have disorder, but you can be like in a holding pattern. And I feel like that's been most of my life, just a holding pattern. And I can't do that anymore. I'm just going to move where I need to go, and go where I need to go, and do what I'm going to do, and be with who I want to be with. And, if people are good with it, fine. If they're not, then I guess they'll have to go be good somewhere else. I don't know,
Do you think we put, how, I mean, I believe that before you come in here, you have a set of not rules, but things you want to learn, like a purpose or something. Oh, I want to go around and I want to learn what unconditional love is, or I want to know what bravery is, or I want to know what, tolerance, whatever lesson you don't want to come in. Do you think that part of before you come in, you put different pins on the board and go, around this time, if it doesn't happen, I really need a wake-up call. And then boom, it happens. Like, do you think that do we attract this? Do we or is it just like the powers that be said, all right, she ain't getting it. So we have to take care of this. Let's step in right now and we're gonna take care of this problem because I gotta go back to drinking up in the sky and she's not getting it. I don't know. I mean, there has to be something that triggers those experiences because they're not random. Your thing was not random. Mine was not. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm not making myself clear, but I just want to know, do you think that this is premeditated, that everything that happens in our lives somehow is predestined?
I'm uncertain about that at this point. What I feel like is whether it's random or whether it's not random, there's always something to be learned, to be gleaned from the experience. Now, whether that's something that has been pre-planned, because I see like a child born in Syria and their house is blown up. And I think to myself, well, was that part of their life script that happened? Like those are the kind of things that run through my mind. And I think in the last 4 years, what I've witnessed happening to our world and to people in our world, like, I don't know that there's got to be some sort of maybe it's not random because maybe there is some sort of other entity here that really gets off on our suffering. Maybe it's not random in that way, but as in terms of whether we come with a plan, I don't really know about that because I'm not real certain. Like, do I come here and deserve to go through something? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But one thing I do know is that through that experience, there is growth. There's something good that comes out of it. There's some, like my learning to get a backbone, in a horrific way. That to me was like, okay, well, did I plan that? I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, did you plan, okay, if I don't get it by then, you could
just
go drastic on me.
Right. Yeah. Let's just really make it bad. I struggle with that. So I won't say that I know one way or the other. At this point where I've landed, and I'm going to play the agnostic in that way too, is where I've landed is there is something to be gained from all these experiences. So there's something to be gained, whether or not that was pre-scripted or whether or not it was just random. That's the best I can come up with at this point.
Well, maybe that's how we win this war on our souls, where we flip the script and we go, screw you. I'm still getting something out of this. This is still going to turn out great for me. I'm going to take your damn lemons and make some lemonade. So F off, loosh feeding monsters or whatever you are.
Yeah, there's this, I don't even know. It might have been, it wasn't The Office, but it was Parks and Recreation. There's an actor there, and there's some film of him going, live. And he's screaming, do what you want to do. And I'm like, that's where I've landed. Like, live your life, do what you want to do. Know what find out what you want and do it. Don't feel like, it's going to be necessarily handed, to you. Go out and just live your life and do it. Do what brings you joy and reduces your suffering. Because, if I really want to get even with these nefarious forces, these archons, the demiurge or whatever they might be, I don't know. I don't know. I'm exploring all these things. The best thing I can do is reduce my suffering. Right? So, because then I'm not feeding them anymore. And then maybe the next best thing I can do is reduce the suffering of others. because then maybe they're not feeding them anymore. You know, maybe that's the best we can do in this world for one another is be agents of reducing suffering, first our own and then the suffering of others.
April, mic drop. So perfect.
Perfect. I am so in awe of both of you. Seriously, like I can't even imagine two people that I can
Mirror, mirror.
go to and go, by the way.
I'm so grateful. Thank you
By
guys
the
for
way.
letting me join in today. That was really cool. Thank you. I'm just very
Oh,
blessed to be here.
we would love to have you on again and again and again. So anytime
Please,
you're
please.
open and available. This was
Let me
beautiful.
know. Let me know. I'll be there.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for being here for today's episode.
Thank you.
Like,
Bye.
share, subscribe. Bye-bye.